They called it the Silk Road, but there was never just one road. It was a web of dust and memory, stretching from the misty cities of China to the sunburned edges of the Mediterranean, a line of hope and hunger, of dreams woven into silk and lives worn thin by the wind. Tonight, we follow that ancient route, not through the shimmer of its treasures, but through the silence between footsteps, through blistered sand and frozen mountain paths, through the long wait for dawn, when only the stars know your name. This is why it sucked to be a Silk Road trader, and more, a slow journey through exhaustion, faith, and the quiet beauty of endurance. Imagine waking to the taste of sand. The sun is not yet risen, but already the air feels heavy, a promise of heat that will grind you down by noon. Your camel shifts beside you, snorting softly, its breath like smoke in the chill dawn. Around you, the caravan stirs, a few dozen men, half asleep, their eyes still full of dreams of distant markets and the smell of home. There is no road here, only suggestion, the faint trace of tracks half buried overnight by the wind. You travel by instinct and by memory. The compass of your heart points west toward profit, but every step takes something from you: water, patience, strength. By midday, the desert becomes a mirror, the sky white and merciless, the horizon wavering. Your lips crack. You ration the last skin of water. Someone whispers that another caravan was lost beyond the next ridge. The sand swallowed them whole, their bodies found weeks later, half buried, like driftwood from an ocean that no longer exists. The Silk Road was not a line of gold and trade. It was a corridor of survival. You traded silk and spices for the most precious thing of all: passage, a bed for one night, a bowl of water, a story to keep you company beneath the stars. At night, when the fires die, the desert breathes differently. The camels groan softly, and the sand cools to the touch. You lie awake, listening to the wind sigh through the dunes. In the darkness, it almost sounds like the sea. The wind moves before the dawn does. It stirs the sand first, brushing a thin layer across the sleeping forms of men and camels. There is no clear line between night and morning here, only the gradual surrender of cool air to a heat that begins to bloom beneath the horizon. The stars fade, not all at once, but reluctantly, as if uncertain whether to leave this silent world. The traders wake quietly. No one speaks much at this hour. There is the sound of canvas unrolling, leather creaking, metal clasps clicking as packs are closed. The air smells of ash from last night's fire, mixed with the faint, dry scent of wool and dust. Somewhere, a camel groan, a low, weary complaint that echoes across the dunes. It is a familiar sound, one that marks the beginning of another day on the road. The Silk Road, as it is known today, was never a single line. It was a network, a collection of uncertain paths that stretched like veins across the desert and mountains of Central Asia. To walk it was not to follow a map, but to trust in memory, rumor, and instinct. Each caravan knew its portion of the route, and beyond that lay only stories of oases that might still exist, or might have long ago turned to dust. The traders carry many things: bolts of silk packed tightly against moisture, jars of dried tea leaves, lumps of jade wrapped in cloth, baskets of pepper and cinnamon. But most of all, they carry time. Weeks stretch into months. A single journey may last a year or more. The profit, when it comes, is uncertain and often small. The true burden is endurance itself. As the first light spills over the sand, the world flattens into colorless brightness. There are no landmarks, no signs, nothing to measure distance except the movement of the sun. The sky becomes a pale white sheet, and the dunes ripple like frozen waves. Each one looks the same as the last, yet hides its own slope and softness. Camels move with deliberate rhythm, their hooves pressing down prints that will vanish within minutes. The traders speak little during the day. Breath is a resource, saved as carefully as water. Words come in short phrases: ahead, stop, drink, load again. There are few jokes on this road and fewer songs, even laughter seems to dry out here, turned brittle by heat and repetition. The sun soon becomes a weight. It presses down on the back of the neck, so that even turning the head feels like effort. The wind rises, but it brings no comfort. Only more sand, sharp and fine as powder. It creeps into nostrils, ears, the folds of clothing, the corners of eyes. It collects in the cracks of skin until every motion stings. By midday, the horizon begins to waver. The heat distorts it, pulling mountains from the air and lakes from light. The traders know better than to believe in water that shimmers so perfectly blue. Still, the eyes drift toward it again and again, drawn by something older than reason. There are long stretches where nothing happens. No sound, no bird, no cloud, just the slow shuffle of camels, the clinking of harness rings, the sigh of the wind moving across the plain. Time loses its rhythm. Days blur into one another. A trader may wake and not know which day of the week it is, or how far he has traveled since the last well. The desert is patient. It has no interest in memory. When a caravan disappears, swallowed by sandstorm, by thirst, by direction lost, the dunes shift, and within hours there is no sign of them. No bones, no cloth, no echo, only the endless surface smooth again. The danger is constant, but quiet. Bandits are the loudest of the threats, but even they fade beside the slow, invisible enemies. Exhaustion, fever, despair. The body weakens before the will does. A man might keep walking long after his strength is gone, simply because there is nothing else to do. At night, when the fires are lit, the mood changes slightly. Shadows stretch long across the sand. The sky opens again, immense and crowded with stars. There is always a moment, between the last cup of tea and the closing of eyes, when silence seems to deepen into something infinite. The traders stare at the sky as if at a map too vast to read, each star a promise of direction, but none truly fixed. Water is rationed by habit. No one needs to be told. A single skin might last 3 days if handled with care. The taste changes as it warms in the leather, acquiring the faint bitterness of dust. Even the act of swallowing becomes deliberate, measured, as though one might drink too much air. Sometimes they find an oasis, a place where palms rise out of the sand, where birds move between green branches, where the water shines like glass. For a few hours, there is relief. Clothes are washed, animals rest. Men sleep deeply, their faces turned toward the sound of trickling water. But leaving again always feels harder. The desert beyond the palms seems larger than before, its silence heavier. There are paths through mountain passes too, where the air turns sharp and thin. Here, the danger changes form. The cold replaces heat. The stillness is broken by wind howling between stones. The ground crunches with frost beneath the camel's hooves. The travelers wrap themselves in layers of wool and leather, yet the chill still seeps in. Breath hangs visible, drifting upward like pale smoke. Snow makes its own desert. White replaces gold, and the horizon disappears into glare. The traders move more slowly, guiding their animals step by step across narrow trails that crumble away into ravines. One slip can send a man and his cargo into the valley below, gone in seconds. They tie ropes to one another in these places, not out of hope, but out of discipline. No one wants to vanish alone. The Silk Road connects worlds that seem almost mythical to each other. To traders from the east, the west is a place of endless lands beyond their imagining, cities where strange tongues echo in markets filled with copper and glass. To those from the west, the east is a realm of shimmering fabrics and spices that burn with color and scent. And yet, those who carry the goods between these worlds often see neither end. They live in the middle, walking between illusions. The road itself has no single name among them. In Chinese, it is often spoken of as the road to the western regions. In Persian, as the way of caravans. Each culture sees it as leading away from home, towards something faint and uncertain. No one claims it as their own. Rest is found in caravanserais, fortified inns built at intervals where trade routes cross. Here, walls of mud brick or stone offer protection from wind and thieves. Inside, there is a courtyard for camels and small rooms with flat roofs where travelers spread their mats. The smell inside such a place is complex: sweat, smoke, spice, and the faint sweetness of dried fruit. Meals are simple: bread, lentils, perhaps a stew if someone has meat to share. And yet, for a single night, it feels like abundance. In these places, languages blend. One may hear Persian beside Chinese, Turkic beside Sanskrit, Arabic beside Greek. No one understands everything, but gestures fill the gaps. Trade, after all, needs no grammar. A coin placed on the palm, a nod, a measure of weight, they are enough. By morning, everyone will move on again in different directions. The road rarely allows for long acquaintance. Illness is a quiet companion. The dust itself carries fever. Wounds heal slowly. Eyes redden from sun and grit. Hands crack from dryness. There are no physicians on the road, only the herbs a man knows from his own land, and the advice of strangers met along the way. Sometimes the sick is left behind, with water enough for a day, and their faces are turned toward the nearest oasis in hope. The others must walk on. Despite this, trade continues. It always has. The desire to exchange, to move what is abundant here to where it is rare, drives the caravans onward. Silk, in particular, is more than cloth. It is a currency of beauty and mystery. Those who have never seen it imagine it glows by its own light. A single bolt can buy a horse or a lifetime of grain. At night, when the fires are low, traders sometimes unroll their goods to check for damage. Even in that dim light, silk gleams softly, catching every spark from the flame. For a few moments the men watch it in silence, their tired faces reflecting its shimmer. It is a reminder of purpose, proof that suffering might one day translate into something of value. But beauty does not last long in the desert. Dust clings to everything. The fine threads lose their sheen. The smell of smoke and sweat replaces the faint fragrance of the market stalls they once imagined. Each step forward makes the cargo a little less perfect. Profit fades with distance. Storms come without warning. The first sign is the horizon darkening, not with cloud, but with the rising wall of dust. The air changes taste. Dry becomes metallic, as though filled with ground stone. The traders move quickly then, wrapping their faces, herding camels close together, sinking low behind packs. The world turns to noise and blindness. Sand moves like water, cutting at skin, filling mouths and eyes. It can last for minutes or hours. When it passes, the shapes of the land have changed. Dunes have moved, paths have vanished. Sometimes even the direction of travel must be guessed anew. And yet they continue, always forward. To stop too long is to risk the same fate as those who came before, forgotten beneath shifting sand. The seasons change, but the struggle remains constant. Summer brings heat enough to blister skin. Winter brings cold that stiffens fingers to stone. There are insects that bite and fever that follows. There are sudden floods when mountain snow melts, turning valleys into traps. The road gives no comfort and no certainty. It demands, and the traders comply. Occasionally there are moments of quiet beauty, the sight of a flock of cranes crossing overhead. The first cool wind after a month of heat. The moon rising full over dunes that glow silver instead of gold. These moments come and go, wordless, leaving behind only the faint sensation that all suffering is part of a vast, unbroken rhythm. At times, the traders speak of home, not often and never for long. Memories grow dim here, softened by distance and repetition. Voices sound hollow when they try to describe things that others have not seen. The color of a field, the smell of rain, the laughter of a market in spring, these seem less real the farther one walks. In their place grows a different familiarity, the smell of camel hide, the endless rhythm of hooves, the metallic taste of wind, the road itself becomes home. For those who survive long enough to return, the world feels smaller. Cities seem loud, walls confining. The mind drifts back to the openness of the desert, to the simplicity of movement, to the discipline of thirst. Some set out again, unable to remain in one place. The road does not let go easily. When people today imagine the Silk Road, they picture wealth. Merchants draped in fine cloth, camels heavy with treasure, the glow of trade linking empires. But that is only the surface. Beneath it lies fatigue, the slow erosion of the body and the will, the quiet understanding that most who walked this road did so not for luxury, but for survival. Each grain of spice, each thread of silk, each carved bead of jade bears the memory of this journey. They carry not just value, but distance. The hands that passed them along were cracked and trembling. The feet that delivered them were blistered and numb. The trade that connected worlds was built on silence, endurance, and the steady, unremarkable act of walking. As the night deepens, the fire dies down again. The desert cools, sighing as if exhaling the day. Camels rest on their folded legs. Men sleep beneath blankets, their faces hidden, their breathing slow and even. The stars return, patient and unblinking. There will be another dawn, another day of walking. The same dunes, the same light, the same weight of heat, the same uncertain horizon. And yet, step by step, this endless repetition becomes history. From their weariness grew the first global exchange, the slow weaving of east and west. In the quiet before sleep, the desert seems infinite, but so too does human persistence. Somewhere in that balance, the stillness of sand and the motion of feet, lies the story of the Silk Road. But not everyone who walked the Silk Road sought fortune. Some walked for something lighter and far heavier, truth. In the 7th century, a monk named Xuanzang left Chang'an, the grand capital of China, and walked west into the unknown. He carried no weapon, only prayer beads, manuscripts, and the quiet certainty that wisdom lay beyond the desert. He crossed the Gobi, where even camels balked at the emptiness. He walked through the Taklamakan, a name that even then meant you go in and never come out. When the water skins dried, he drank melted snow. When he lost his way, he followed the stars, reciting sutras to steady his heart. He was robbed. He was turned away at borders. Once, he collapsed beneath a ridge of red stone and almost died. But he rose again, always. Years passed. He reached India, gathered the sacred texts he sought, and returned to China with treasures not of gold, but of knowledge, scriptures that would shape centuries of Buddhist thought. And yet, perhaps the truest part of his story lies not in the arrival, but in the walking itself. Each footstep a prayer, each hardship a page in a greater scripture. There is something deeply peaceful in that idea, that suffering, when carried with purpose, becomes a kind of grace. The journey of Xuanzang, monk of 1,000 miles. The world opens slowly at dawn, a muted wash of pale gold and soft gray. In the city of Chang'an, in the 7th century, a monk prepares to leave. His name is Xuanzang. He does not know the length of the road ahead. He does not know how many nights he will sleep beneath the sky. All he knows is the certainty of one small truth, that he must walk. He leaves the walls of the city quietly. The streets are waking slowly. Merchants unroll their stalls, and the scent of fresh bread drifts along the alleys. Horses neigh, a dog barks once, and the city exhales into the morning. The monk moves along paved streets that soon give way to dirt paths. The orderly clamor of urban life recedes behind him. Each step carries him further from the familiar and closer to the unknown. The first days are not difficult, not in the sense of danger. He walks through gentle hills and along rivers that flow with soft, constant sound. Fields stretch out in muted greens, and villages appear occasionally, their roofs and walls simple, almost blending with the earth. The people he encounters greet him politely, bowing slightly, offering water, perhaps a small meal. He accepts but does not linger. There is a rhythm to his walking, a quiet discipline that shapes every breath and movement. Soon the city is gone entirely. He enters the western regions, a land of steppes and rising mountains. The sun becomes hotter, stronger. The wind carries dust, dry and fine, that tastes faintly of stone. Rivers grow narrower and more uncertain, their paths shifting with the seasons. Xuanzang measures distance in the slow passing of the sun and the subtle bending of terrain. Each day is a small, deliberate effort, and the mind learns to pace itself in tandem with the body. He travels with little more than the robes on his back, a staff, and a bundle of texts. Each night, he sets down carefully what he has carried, rolling the cloth of his bedding across the ground. He prays quietly, often under the faint silver light of the moon, or by the warm glow of a small fire if he has been able to make one. The silence of these moments is profound. It is the same silence that will cover mountains, deserts, and rivers alike as he continues. The Gobi Desert lies ahead, and the horizon grows pale and unending. Here, the monotony of sand and sky can become a weight heavier than any physical burden. There is no shelter from the sun in the day. There is no warmth from the earth at night. Even the wind carries sand that scratches the skin, invading every fold of clothing. Camels, the companions of many travelers, are unfamiliar to Xuanzang, who moves slowly and carefully across dunes, relying on instinct and the knowledge of those who have gone before. Water is scarce. He drinks only when necessary, tasting it slowly, deliberately, measuring the exact swallow. When the reservoirs are low, he melts snow or collects dew, using all means available to extend his supply. Each drop becomes precious beyond measure, each sip a reminder of the fragility of life. And yet he does not despair. The journey itself has become a meditation, a repetition of steps that soothe the mind even as they challenge the body. The mountains arrive next, rising suddenly from the flat stretches of desert. The paths become narrow and rocky, carved by water over centuries. Snow lingers in shaded crevices, and the cold presses against his thin garments. His breath hangs visible in the air, each exhale a small cloud in the early light. The weight of the climb is steady and relentless. Rocks shift beneath his sandals. Every foothold must be considered. One misstep could lead to injury, or worse, at night, when he rests among boulders or within small caves, he traces the path he has walked with his mind. He visualizes every river bend, every ridge, every tree that marks a change in the landscape. These mental maps allow him to move confidently, to anticipate the shape of the terrain, and to keep a part of his mind occupied while his body rests. Traveling through regions governed by strangers, he often encounters suspicion. Borders are guarded, and travelers are rare. He carries no weapon, and this absence is noticed. Sometimes he is delayed for days, while officials decide whether to allow him passage. Other times, he is turned away completely, forced to find longer, more arduous routes. The journey, he learns, is not only physical, but a negotiation of human boundaries, customs, and language. Yet there are moments of grace along the way. Small villages, barely visible from the road, offer fresh water and simple meals of grain and vegetables. Monks and scholars occasionally meet him along the route, offering brief companionship, stories, and sometimes advice on the terrain ahead. He accepts these moments without expectation. Even a brief conversation, a shared cup of tea, can leave a trace of warmth that lingers long after the travelers part. The desert and mountains blend into one continuous trial. Time ceases to have the same meaning. Days and nights follow, but each is filled with repetition. Walking, observing, conserving energy, resting. The body learns to move with efficiency. The mind learns to quiet itself, to focus on the rhythm of motion rather than the length of the path ahead. In this way, the journey becomes almost sacred, an act of living as deliberate as prayer. At some point, illness strikes, a fever, sudden and unexpected. weakens him. He must pause, resting under the shade of a rock or behind a ridge. His body becomes a landscape of pain and recovery. Even when the sun is strong, he sleeps beneath a cloth or the faint shelter of his staff and robe. The desert watches silently, indifferent to suffering. But Xuanzang waits patiently, understanding that endurance is a quiet companion of the road. His journey is long enough that supplies dwindle. Food becomes measured: dried grains, small portions of fruit, nuts, and the occasional fish preserved in salt. Hunger is never sharp, only persistent, a slow gnawing that demands attention yet does not dominate thought. Water, even more carefully rationed, becomes a guide for pace and rest. Each decision is deliberate. He has learned to move without waste: energy, speech, even motion. Crossing the Taklamakan Desert is among the greatest trials. It is sometimes called the Sea of Death, and its name is given with reverence and fear. The sands stretch endlessly, moving with wind and time. Oases are sparse and often illusory. Many travelers before him have been lost here. Some never return. Others are found only as bones scattered across the dunes. He follows the faint marks of previous caravans, though often they are erased within hours. The sun becomes unrelenting, and the nights bitterly cold. Sand gets into every fold of clothing, every crease of skin, every inhalation. Camels plod ahead steadily, unconcerned with the dangers that seem so present to the mind of a human. The rhythm of their movement becomes a companion, a constant amid uncertainty. Each morning, he rises before the sun. The first light illuminates the pale desert, casting shadows across dunes that stretch like frozen waves. He walks for hours without speaking. His only sounds are the shift of feet, the groan of camels, the faint whisper of wind moving across sand. The horizon is rarely a destination. It is simply another measure of motion. Occasionally, he is forced to climb hills of sand that shift beneath his weight. Each step is laborious. The sun's rays burn the skin. The sweat dries almost immediately, leaving a fine layer of salt. Even his eyes, partially shielded by cloth, sting with the fine particles carried by wind. It is in these moments that the act of walking becomes almost a meditation. Each step is deliberate, each breath measured, each motion as quiet as the movement of the wind. Along the way, he encounters signs of the civilizations that once thrived here. Ruined caravanserais, half buried in sand, mark resting points for travelers long gone. Fragments of pottery, broken utensils, rusted tools, all whisper quietly of human presence and perseverance. He observes these with the same calm that guides his steps, never stopping too long, never becoming attached, only noting their existence. His path eventually leads to mountains that stretch toward the sky. The air is thin, rivers run swiftly in narrow channels, and snow clings stubbornly to slopes. Here, the pace slows. Each footstep must be considered. The risk of injury is high. Yet even these obstacles are met with patience, the mind quiet, the body disciplined. As he descends into the regions of Central Asia, he begins to encounter cultures and languages unfamiliar to him. He sees the markets of towns, hears merchants calling in strange tongues, smells unfamiliar spices and foods. He moves among them silently, respectful, careful not to linger too long. He trades when necessary but rarely seeks company. The journey itself is more important than the goods he might exchange or the recognition he might earn. By the time he reaches India, years have passed. The roads have shaped him. His body is lean, hardened by exposure, yet it carries a certain grace, the quiet strength of endurance. His mind is shaped by repetition and observation, by the subtle understanding of distance, patience, and the slow passing of days. He seeks out the sacred texts he came for, studying them with attention and care. And when he prepares to return to China, he carries not only the texts, but the accumulated knowledge of the entire journey, the rhythm of walking, the patience of waiting, the quiet acceptance of hardship. Even on the return trip he continues the same slow, deliberate steps. The desert, mountains, and rivers are unchanged in essence, though they appear different to eyes that have learned to see slowly, deliberately, meditatively. Every dawn is greeted with the same muted light. Every night falls with the same silver quiet. The road, patient and indifferent, has become a companion. Xuanzang's journey is remarkable not for speed, not for conquest, but for duration, discipline, and patience. He moves through regions that most fear, through environments that seem uninhabitable. He survives by careful planning, slow observation, and the quiet acceptance of what cannot be changed. And in this, there is a kind of timeless lesson. Endurance itself, when practiced with mindfulness, can become almost sacred. Even now, as the Silk Road is no longer the same, traces of his journey remain. The steps he took, the texts he carried, the connections he made between people and cultures, they echo quietly across centuries. His story is one of human persistence and the meditative act of walking, uninterrupted by desire, violence, or haste. It is a slow, steady rhythm that teaches the mind to be calm, to observe, and to accept the passing of time as something continuous and inevitable. The road never truly ends. Each path leads to another, each desert to another mountain, each river to another river. For those who walk it patiently, the journey itself becomes the reward, the act of movement, a quiet meditation, and the long miles a reflection of endurance. And in the still moments, when the wind is gentle and the stars are out, one can almost hear it. The whisper of sand, the soft groan of a camel, the faint shuffle of a single footstep, carrying a monk across the world, slowly, endlessly, quietly, towards something that exists only in the rhythm of the road itself. The Silk Road is quiet now, but beneath the dunes the echoes remain. Archaeologists digging in the shifting sands of the Tarim Basin have found them. Caravanserais, where traders once slept behind stone walls, safe from bandits and storms. Ruined markets, their stalls still lined with pottery shards and rusted coins. A well, half filled with sand, its bricks still faintly marked by fingerprints of those who built it. These were the resting places of a connected world, oases where languages met, Persian, Sogdian, Chinese, Arabic, 1,000 dialects tangled together like threads of silk. Imagine walking into one of those towns as the sun sets. A small courtyard, the smell of bread baking in clay ovens, children laughing beside camels kneeling in the dust, the slow rhythm of conversation between strangers who will never meet again. And then, centuries later, all of it buried. The dunes rolled in, and silence took hold. But silence has its own kind of memory. Every grain of sand along the Taklamakan still holds the ghost of a footprint, the weight of a hand that once led a caravan by the rope. Sometimes, when the wind blows a certain way, it uncovers fragments. A bronze clasp, a sliver of parchment, a piece of turquoise once traded for salt. Each one a reminder that the world we inhabit now was once bound together by people who walked, slowly, painfully, across impossible distances. The hidden cities beneath the sand. The desert holds its secrets quietly. Beneath the dunes, beneath the shifting gold and silver, lie traces of lives once lived. The wind moves over sand in endless ripples, erasing footsteps, covering walls, and folding buildings into its embrace. The surface appears uniform, monotonous, yet beneath lies a mosaic of vanished worlds. These are the hidden cities, the caravanserais, the forgotten oases, and the silent marketplaces that once thrummed with human activity, long before modern archaeologists came to uncover them. These places were known only to the desert itself. A wall might rise slightly above the sand, a few stones jutting in defiance of time, or a well might sink faintly into a dune, its mouth hidden by centuries of dust. The rest exists only in fragments, glimpses of a once connected world that moved along the Silk Road. They are reminders of travel and trade, of the rhythm of human movement across harsh landscapes, and of the endurance required to make such journeys possible. To walk through one of these hidden cities is to enter a space where time has become porous. The air is quiet, almost still, yet it carries the faintest echo of voices long gone. You might imagine a trader from the west, his camel kneeling beside a low stone wall, unloading jars of spice and silk. Nearby, a merchant from the east measures the weight of jade, speaking in a tongue unfamiliar to most. The courtyard is crowded with activity, yet there is no one present now. Only sand and wind move through the remains. Caravanserais were the resting points of the Silk Road, built at regular intervals where travelers could find shelter. Their walls were often made of mud brick or rough stone, designed to protect people and animals alike from storms, bandits, and the harshness of the elements. Within the walls, a courtyard held camels and pack animals, sometimes small wells or troughs for water. Rooms for rest were simple, rectangular, and often cold in the desert night, yet they offered relief from the constant exposure of the road. These structures, even when partially buried, speak to a deliberate human order in the midst of vast, unyielding nature. Every brick, every doorway, every footprint once left within their confines reflects the rhythm of survival. It is not the grandeur of a palace or the luxury of a city that defines these places, but the quiet endurance of travelers who pass through step by step, night by night. The markets of these cities were once small yet vibrant. Merchants arranged their goods carefully, silk folded into neat bundles, spices stacked in jars or baskets, glass beads strung on thin cords. The air would have smelled of dust, smoke, herbs, and baked bread. Conversations would have flowed in multiple languages, sometimes unintelligible to anyone but a few, yet understood through gestures, shared measures, and exchanged coins. Even in their simplicity, these markets connected continents. Each trade was a quiet bridge between distant lands. Now, centuries later, archaeologists unearth fragments of these lives. A shard of pottery, half buried in sand, bears the faint fingerprint of a child or a craftsman. A rusted coin speaks of a transaction long forgotten. The remains of a well show traces of hands that lowered water carefully, understanding its value beyond measure. Even small objects, a carved bead, a fragment of cloth, a piece of wood, carry memory. The desert may have hidden these cities, but it could not erase the imprint of human life entirely. These discoveries are often gradual, almost imperceptible. A dig might reveal a single wall at first, a few bricks carefully layered. Excavators work with patience, brushing away centuries of sand, uncovering patterns of streets, rooms, and courtyards. Sometimes entire layouts of forgotten cities appear, revealing that what once seemed isolated or insignificant was in fact part of a network of trade, movement, and connection. Every object tells a story, though the stories are never loud. They are soft, quiet, slow, and must be read with attention and care. Oases are another form of hidden city. Once thriving with palms, water, and life, they offered respite from the vast emptiness of the desert. Travelers could rest, resupply, and trade. Some oases grew into towns, their markets alive with local crafts, foods, and conversation. Others remained temporary, supporting only a few families, small temples, or modest shelters. Now, some are completely swallowed by sand, their waters hidden underground, their trees long gone. The desert keeps its secrets, only revealing them when wind, rain, or careful human hands uncover the past. In many of these sites, one can detect the rhythm of the Silk Road itself. Stone paths mark where camels once walked. Courtyards indicate gathering spaces for merchants and travelers. Rooms suggest long rests, perhaps measured in nights or weeks, punctuated by the faint routines of daily life. Every detail, no matter how small, speaks to the discipline and repetition required to sustain movement across such vast distances. The people who passed through these hidden cities were often nameless, their identities swallowed by time. Yet their existence is tangible. The objects they touched, the steps they took, the water they drew, all remain, quietly asserting that life moved here, slowly, deliberately, and with purpose. The sand may cover them, the wind may scatter them, but the traces persist. These remnants also reveal fragility. The desert does not forgive carelessness. Caravanserais that were once sturdy crumble without maintenance. Markets vanish when trade routes shift. Oases dry up or are diverted by natural changes. Even entire towns disappear when their purpose no longer aligns with human movement. The Silk Road was never permanent, and neither were the places that supported it. Walking among the ruins, one begins to understand the impermanence of human enterprise. The structures, once essential, are now silent. The trade, once bustling, is now only traceable through artifacts. And yet, in this silence, there is continuity. The road itself, though buried in sand in places, still exists in memory, connecting lives and regions across time. Some of the most fascinating discoveries are those that show cultural exchange. Pottery designs from China appear alongside Central Asian motifs. Coins minted in Persia are found in layers of sand far from their origin. Inscriptions in multiple scripts are carved on walls, suggesting the mingling of languages and ideas. Even the layout of streets reflects an understanding of both local geography and wider patterns of movement. These hidden cities were not isolated. They were nodes in a living network, transmitting not only goods but knowledge, customs, and beliefs. Travelers on the Silk Road relied on these places not just for survival, but for guidance. Maps and written directions might be rare, but memory of known caravanserais guided movement. A trader's life depended on knowing which oasis had water, which town had supplies, and which path avoided dangerous territory. To lose this knowledge was to risk everything. The hidden cities, therefore, were as much markers of safety as they were centers of commerce. Yet despite their importance, the desert eventually reclaimed them. Sand shifts constantly, erasing the outlines of walls and roads. Floods occasionally wash away foundations. Buildings collapse under their own weight. In time, even memory of some cities fades entirely, leaving only the faintest trace for those who seek them centuries later. Archaeological work has revealed unexpected structures, libraries or small temples within caravanserais, where travelers could rest and study, perhaps meditate. There are traces of workshops, where craftsmen repaired goods, made tools, or created ornaments. Some streets are wide enough to accommodate the passage of large caravans. Others are narrow, intended only for foot traffic or pack animals. These details illustrate that life on the Silk Road was organized, deliberate, and complex. Far beyond the image of casual wandering, even water systems show foresight. Wells were dug strategically, channels directed water where it was needed. Reservoirs stored supplies for dry periods. In the desert, water was wealth, and its management reveals an intimate understanding of the landscape, climate, and human need. Many hidden cities also reveal religious and cultural exchange. Buddhist stupas and shrines appear alongside Zoroastrian and local cult sites. Symbols carved on stones, inscriptions in multiple languages, and small offerings indicate that travelers and residents brought their beliefs with them, and that these beliefs mingled quietly in everyday life. Here, in the quiet ruins, one sees the silent conversation of civilizations. The desert, in its patience, preserves fragments. A small well, still partially functional, may stand beside a crumbled wall. A ceramic bowl, etched with decorative motifs, may lie half-buried. A fragment of cloth or leather, softened by time, reminds us that life moved here step by step, day by day. These artifacts carry no narrative voice. They exist only as traces, leaving it to the observer to imagine the rhythm of life that produced them. Sometimes, hidden cities reveal the fragility of human presence in the face of nature. A sudden flood, a shifting dune, a winter freeze could render a site unusable. Trade routes moved accordingly. A once thriving city could be abandoned in a single generation, leaving only sand and the occasional fragment of wall. Yet, even abandoned, these places bear witness to human resilience, the effort to survive and connect across distances, no matter how harsh. In some sites, layers of occupation tell stories of continuous adaptation. New walls are built over older ones, rooms are repurposed, pathways are altered to suit changing needs or terrain. The hidden cities were never static, they evolved, responding to climate, trade patterns, and the movement of people. This subtle dynamism contrasts with the apparent stillness of the desert, reminding us that life always adapts, even in the harshest of environments. As one moves carefully among these ruins, it becomes possible to trace the flow of the Silk Road itself. Stone by stone, artifact by artifact, the outline of commerce and connection emerges. It is a story without a narrator, told through the quiet language of sand, brick, and shadow. Every object is a word, every footprint a sentence, every well a paragraph in the larger text of human endurance. Even centuries later, these hidden cities have a rhythm. The wind sweeps across walls, carrying sand in waves that echo the movement of traders. Animals stir faintly in buried layers, their footprints preserved under dust. Sunlight shifts across dunes, tracing the path of ancient streets. Time flows slowly here, almost imperceptibly, yet it moves with steady persistence. In imagining these spaces, one can almost hear the soft sounds of the past. The low murmur of traders discussing weight and value, the quiet clink of coin on palm, the distant bray of a camel, or the shuffle of sandal against stone. Even the occasional laughter of children, ephemeral and light, becomes part of the rhythm. All of it, layered beneath centuries of sand, waiting to be discovered again. The hidden cities beneath the desert are reminders that the Silk Road was not only a route but a network of lives. Traders, travelers, and residents moved through these spaces, each contributing to the rhythm of exchange, survival, and human connection. Even when abandoned, these cities continue to speak, softly, slowly, and without judgment. They remind us that human presence is fleeting, yet it leaves traces. Endurance, adaptation, and quiet effort can persist. Even when all else disappears, here beneath the sand, the Silk Road remains alive. Not in its original form, not in commerce or gold, but in memory, in objects, and in the subtle echoes of movement. The road endures, traced in stone, clay, and the soft whispers of wind over dunes. The hidden cities are proof that even in vast emptiness, life persists slowly, deliberately, and without fanfare. And so, the desert holds its secrets, waiting patiently for those who will walk its paths, brush the sand away, and notice. For those who do, the hidden cities offer a quiet story of human endurance, connection, and the subtle rhythm of lives, lived step by step, beneath a patient sky, in a landscape as unforgiving as it is infinite. And then, there was Samarkand, the jewel of the Silk Road. When traders finally reached it, after months of heat and hardship, it must have felt like another world entirely. Blue domes glinting in the sunlight, walls dressed in tiles the color of twilight, courtyards where water shimmered in long marble pools. In the 14th century, the conqueror Timur ruled from here. His court a swirl of color, fragrance, and sound. Astrologers whispered to the stars. Musicians plucked strings that shimmered like rain. Silk from China, spices from India, amber from the Baltic, all found their way to his palace. But even in all that beauty, you can almost sense the exhaustion beneath the splendor. Every gem, every bowl, every scroll, carried by hands that blistered under the same sun. History tends to remember the rulers and the riches, But perhaps what endures most are the quiet footsteps that link them. The trader who trudged through snow in the Pamirs, the monk who crossed the desert whispering mantras to himself, the child who fell asleep listening to camels breathing in the dark. The Silk Road was never truly about silk. It was about connection, fragile, fleeting, human, a whisper between worlds, the palace of Samarkand. The journey ends, though not with the stillness of desert or mountain, but with the quiet grandeur of a city that has long been the meeting point of worlds. Samarkand, ancient and patient, rises from the steppe with a dignity that is both subtle and overwhelming. Its walls are warm under the sun, made of stone and brick that have witnessed centuries of passage, trade, conquest, and quiet endurance. The city smells faintly of dust, spices, and baked earth, and a gentle wind carries the mingled scents through narrow streets and open courtyards. At the heart of Samarkand, the palace stands as a testament not to human speed, but to deliberate craft. The walls are high, their surfaces patterned with geometric precision. Jeweled tiles shimmer faintly in sunlight, not with the brilliance of extravagance alone, but with the quiet insistence of patience and labor. Domes curve skyward, blue as a river, punctuated with gold accents that catch light only when it is right. Even in the vastness of the courtyard, one senses that every stone, every tile, has been placed with intention. Within the palace, rooms open to one another like the pages of a book. Corridors are lined with arches, each one echoing softly as footsteps pass beneath. The air is cool, filtered through carved stone and latticework, offering relief from the heat of midday. Shadows move slowly across the floors, stretching and fading with the sun, tracing the paths of those who walk here. In the quiet, one begins to perceive the rhythm of the palace, the slow pulse of architecture and light that has endured through decades and centuries. The palace was home to Timur, known in later history as Tamerlane. He ruled with a presence that was exacting, deliberate, and in this space almost invisible. The rooms prepared for audience, for feasting, for council, are designed for flow rather than display, even in their ornamentation. Gilded ceilings, patterned tiles, mosaics of star-like geometry. The grandeur is measured. It is a palace built not to overwhelm at first glance, but to sustain over time, to structure life within its walls with quiet authority. Silk drapes hang in corridors, catching a faint breeze. They move slowly, almost imperceptibly, creating a rhythm of motion that softens the solidity of stone. The rooms smell faintly of incense and polish, a combination cultivated over decades of careful maintenance. Light enters through latticed windows, creating patterns on the floors and walls, shadows that slowly shift as the sun arcs across the sky. Time is slower here, measured not by the rush of hours, but by the subtle movements of light and air. Astrologers and scholars once filled the palace with soft, constant activity. They studied the stars, calculated calendars, and observed the subtle rhythms of the heavens. Books, scrolls, and instruments of observation lay quietly on tables, some carved from wood, others inlaid with metals or precious stones. The act of study was deliberate, patient, and meticulous, requiring focus and long hours. Even the silence of the palace seems shaped by these habits, tempered to sustain reflection rather than interruption. In the great hall, long tables once held feasts. They were draped in soft fabrics, laden with food prepared with care. Rice, roasted meats, fruits, and sweets created a palette of color and scent. The tables are empty now, but one can imagine the quiet clinking of dishes, the low murmur of conversation, the careful movements of servants bringing platters to the guests. Even without sound, the memory of these acts seems to linger in the air, a faint echo of human presence repeated in stillness. The palace gardens, though modest in size compared to the vastness of the city, are intentional in every detail. Paths of stone wind through carefully planted flower beds and fountains. Water flows gently, a soft and constant murmur that cools the air and creates a rhythm for walking and reflection. Trees are spaced deliberately, their shade calculated to offer relief at different times of day. The gardens are a meditation in themselves, a slow, deliberate reminder of the natural world within a constructed space. At night, the palace takes on a different character. Lanterns glow faintly in corridors, casting warm light on stone floors and walls. Shadows deepen, moving slowly with the flicker of flame. The air becomes cooler, carrying the scent of night-blooming flowers and the faint trace of distant cooking fires from the city beyond. Silence is punctuated only by soft footsteps, the occasional whisper of wind through lattices, and the quiet hum of a city that never fully sleeps. Looking outward from the palace, Samarkand itself is a mosaic of streets and markets, of domes and minarets. The city rises gradually from the surrounding steppe, blending with the land yet asserting its presence. Markets hum with faint energy, though not in the harsh way of a crowded city elsewhere. Traders, artisans, and residents move slowly, deliberately, as if aware of the centuries beneath their feet. The patterns of activity are subtle and repetitive, echoing the rhythms of trade, survival, and continuity that define life along the Silk Road. Even in this city of wealth and culture, the contrast with the road is clear. The desert, mountains, and oases the traders once traversed stretch beyond the horizon. Camels and travelers, worn and patient, are far from these walls. Yet the palace and the city exist because of that movement, sustained by the slow, deliberate effort of those who endured, walked, and connected continents. It is a quiet testament to human persistence, a reflection of the subtle and enduring rhythms of life itself. Architecture and decoration inside the palace reveal careful attention to proportion, pattern, and repetition. Tiles form geometric arrangements that extend across floors and walls, creating an effect both intricate and calm. The visual rhythm is steady, guiding the eye slowly, gently, almost meditatively. Gold accents and jewel tones catch light only at certain angles, never demanding attention, but rewarding careful observation with quiet beauty. The palace is also a place of reflection. Small rooms, often empty, are designed to encourage meditation or private thought. The architecture itself creates pockets of stillness, a shaded niche, a quiet courtyard, a fountain's gentle murmur. These spaces provide relief from the outside world, allowing one to slow, observe, and absorb the subtleties of structure, light, and air. From the upper terraces, the surrounding steppe stretches to the horizon. The land is vast, flat, and quiet, broken only by faint ridges, scattered trees, or distant dunes. The contrast between the openness of the steppe and the deliberate enclosure of the palace emphasizes the measured patience of human design. Here, one can witness the continuity between human settlement and natural landscape, understanding that each depends on the other for context and meaning. The palace also served as a hub of administration and diplomacy. Messages traveled along couriers and emissaries, connecting the city with distant regions. Ambassadors were received in quiet halls, agreements were reached in measured tones, and decisions were implemented slowly, deliberately, in a rhythm that matched the pace of the place itself. Even bureaucracy, here, moved with a calmness rare in human affairs. Inhabitants and visitors of the palace would have lived according to the rhythm of light and shadow. Meals, prayer, study, and rest were scheduled carefully, not in haste, but to sustain long-term stability and clarity. The act of living here was itself a meditation in patience, observation, and deliberate action. Time unfolded slowly, almost imperceptibly, and yet its passage was evident in the movement of sunlight across stone floors, in the shifting shadows of domes and arches, in the gentle flow of fountains and watercourses. Silence is a defining quality of the palace. Even in spaces once filled with people, the absence of sound does not feel empty. Instead, it is structured, patterned, and alive, in subtle ways. The whisper of wind through latticework, the faint creak of doors, the soft echo of distant footsteps, all create a rhythm that encourages attention and quiet reflection. Beyond the palace, the city of Samarkand continues to breathe. Markets, mosques, streets, and squares extend outward, forming a living network of human activity. The palace does not dominate by spectacle alone. It exists as a nucleus within the larger city, influencing rhythm, structure, and movement, while remaining part of a broader continuity. Even from a distance, one perceives the deliberate connection between architecture, landscape, and the slow pace of life that has defined the city for centuries. The palace, in its quiet grandeur, also symbolizes the contrast between the desert road and urban life. The travelers who once endured harsh climates, thirst, and isolation eventually reached spaces of relative comfort, security, and reflection. Their movement across mountains, dunes, and hidden cities led to this culmination. A place where human skill, patience, and endurance converge in structure, light, and rhythm. It is a quiet celebration, not of wealth or power, but of persistence, organization, and subtle beauty. Even in modern times, the Palace of Samarkand evokes this rhythm. Visitors walk slowly through its corridors, noticing details of tile, arch, and dome. They sense without effort the deliberate pacing of centuries, the quiet persistence of design, and the interplay between human intention and natural conditions. The palace teaches patience, observation, and awareness, echoing the endurance required of those who first traversed the Silk Road. In imagining the palace at night, one can sense the soft glow of lanterns, the faint whisper of the wind through lattices, and the quiet movement of shadows. It is a place designed for reflection, study, and meditation, where sound is moderated, light is filtered, and space itself encourages stillness. The experience is gentle, deliberate, and continuous, revealing subtle beauty only to those who move slowly enough to perceive it. The Palace of Samarkand stands as a final meditation on the Silk Road. It is a point of arrival after endless movement, a locus of human patience after years of endurance. Its walls, domes, gardens, and courtyards embody the quiet rhythm of centuries, reflecting the persistence, discipline, and subtle connections of human lives across continents. In the stillness of its corridors, one can feel the echoes of traders, travelers, scholars, and rulers, all moving in a rhythm of measured steps, deliberate thought, and quiet purpose. The city, the palace, and the road beyond are inseparable. Each informs the other. The desert shapes the traveler, the hidden cities mark the path, and the palace reflects the culmination of human patience and craft. Together, they tell a story, not of drama or spectacle, but of continuity, endurance, and the quiet, deliberate pace of human life. And as the night deepens over Samarkand, lanterns glow softly, fountains murmur, and the wind carries the faintest whispers of centuries past. The palace sleeps under the stars, the city exhales gently, and the rhythm of the Silk Road persists, slowly, endlessly, quietly, beneath the patient sky. After the grandeur of the palace, after the shimmering tiles, quiet fountains, and winding corridors of Samarkand, one cannot help but return, in thought, to the road itself. The Silk Road stretches endlessly, a thread weaving mountains, deserts, rivers, and cities into a single, unbroken ribbon of human endurance. It is a road that exists in memory, in experience, in imagination as much as it does in earth and stone. To reflect on it is to consider not only the travelers, but the rhythm of travel itself. Each step, each breath, each measured pace carries meaning. The body moves, but the mind follows a quieter path, observing, noticing, recording in subtle ways that are almost imperceptible. The desert, the mountains, the hidden cities, and the palace are not destinations alone. They are companions in the unfolding rhythm of experience. The road begins before the first step and continues long after the last. It exists in the quiet spaces between movement and rest, between night and day, Between thought and action, a trader pauses at an oasis. A monk sets down his bundle beneath a boulder. A caravaner watches stars appear on a darkened horizon. All of these actions are small, deliberate, and yet they form a pattern that carries across continents and centuries. The mind notices detail that might otherwise go unobserved. The slight curve of a dune, the way a river catches light at dawn, the whisper of wind through reeds, even the subtle patterns of animal tracks across sand or stone are recorded in memory. These moments, quiet and almost invisible, accumulate to form a meditation in motion, a reflection on persistence and presence. One realizes that the journey shapes perception more than the destination. Every hardship, every long stretch of unbroken road, teaches a subtle awareness of pace. The traveler learns to conserve energy, to observe weather and terrain, to anticipate changes in light, in sand, in air. The mind becomes attuned to subtleties, the faint scent of water in a dry riverbed, the soft color shifts of dawn across distant ridges, the almost imperceptible changes in wind that warn of a coming storm. Each observation is recorded in the quiet ledger of experience, shaping understanding without urgency or haste. Memory becomes part of the landscape. The trader remembers previous oases, previous encounters with strangers, previous challenges overcome. The monk remembers texts studied and lessons learned, translating effort into insight, suffering into endurance. Even the faint echoes of cities long abandoned, the hidden caravanserais, ruined walls, broken wells, persist as mental landmarks, guiding both step and thought. Time is experienced differently here, not in hours, not in days, but in the unfolding of experience and the subtle accumulation of understanding. It is also a time of contemplation. Questions are not urgent, answers are not demanded. The mind drifts across the layers of experience, noticing patterns and connections. The road is as much internal as external, a pathway through thought, reflection, and quiet awareness. The traveler comes to understand that endurance is more than physical. It is the patience to observe, to wait, to respond with calm attention, and to allow life to unfold in its own rhythm. The desert, in particular, teaches these lessons. Its vast openness magnifies the smallness of individual effort, yet rewards persistence with clarity. One notices the subtle shifts of light and shadow across dunes. The movement of wind over sand becomes almost musical, a slow rhythm that accompanies each step. Time stretches and folds, creating a sense of continuity that is both gentle and profound. Even in cities, the reflection continues. The bustling market streets, the quiet courtyards, the shaded gardens, all carry echoes of movement, repetition, and connection. Traders, scholars, and artisans leave subtle marks on the environment, a pattern of footsteps, a carefully stacked bundle, a carved inscription. These traces remind the observer that human life is defined as much by quiet persistence as by visible accomplishment. Every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger rhythm of continuity. From the palace of Samarkand, one can look outward and see the continuation of the road. It stretches beyond the walls, beyond the city, into steppe, desert, and mountains. The path may curve, rise, fall, or disappear beneath sand, yet it endures in memory and in the minds of those who walk it, the travelers of the past. The hidden cities, the oasis settlements, all form a continuum, a single, unbroken pulse of human effort and endurance. Reflection also brings awareness of impermanence. Cities are abandoned, oases dry up, walls crumble, even palaces fade in grandeur when unmaintained. Yet impermanence does not erase presence. The patterns of life, the rhythm of travel, the subtle persistence of human effort, all endure in memory, in artifact, in quiet observation. The road itself, intangible yet palpable, continues, slow and deliberate, carrying the essence of all who walked it. The night deepens, and stars appear again, familiar and patient. They are silent witnesses to the journeys below, unchanged in pattern, constant in presence. The travelers look up and feel a continuity that stretches beyond self. The same constellations guided Xuanzang, guided nameless traders, guided weary souls whose lives unfolded quietly in repetition, endurance, and observation. Even when the travelers sleep, even when footsteps cease, the road persists. The reflections extend beyond individuals. The human effort to survive, connect, and endure is visible in layers, in the sand, in ruined cities, in palace walls, in small objects left behind. One begins to perceive a subtle conversation across time, between traveler and desert, between palace and city, between human endeavor and natural rhythm. It is slow, almost imperceptible, yet persistent, and it shapes understanding in ways that immediate observation cannot. In quiet moments, the mind can imagine the road itself as living. It bends, it rises, it stretches, carrying echoes of the past along with the movement of the present. It is a pulse, measured not in haste, but in deliberate continuity. The traveler becomes part of it, yet also observes it externally, understanding both connection and distance. The road teaches patience, attention, and a meditative awareness that does not demand action, only presence. Walking along it, one realizes that all journeys are reflections. The desert reflects patience, the mountains reflect endurance, the hidden cities reflect persistence, the palace reflects culmination and deliberate craft. Each segment of the journey teaches subtly, almost invisibly, lessons that can only be absorbed slowly, in repeated observation and quiet attention. And as reflection deepens, the mind begins to merge with the road itself. Time stretches. Steps become gentle pulses. Breathing aligns with rhythm. The desert wind, the distant murmur of a river, the faint shimmer of city lights on the horizon. They all converge into a single slow continuum. There is nothing to hurry toward, nothing to resist. The road and the traveler are one. This awareness naturally leads toward rest. The body, accustomed to years of walking, begins to release tension. The mind, accustomed to continuous observation, begins to fold in upon itself. The road stretches forward, endlessly, carrying both movement and stillness. There is calm in understanding, serenity in awareness, and gentle comfort in the persistence of continuity. From this place of reflection, one sees that the journey is never truly over. The road continues beyond the desert, beyond the city, beyond even the memory of individual travelers. It exists in the stars, in the sand, in the traces of human life, preserved quietly across centuries. Every step taken, every night spent beneath the sky, every hidden city passed, contributes to a rhythm that is continuous, patient and soft. And as night deepens fully, the mind begins to settle. The caravan slows. The fire burns low. The wind whispers softly across dunes. The road endures, carrying memory, presence, and quiet understanding. The reflections themselves merge into the rhythm of the journey, preparing the way for the final pause, the last night, and the soft fade into endless calm. The long road home. Night falls gently over the desert once again. The horizon softens, and the sun, which has traced its slow arc across the sky, dips beneath distant dunes, leaving only the faintest glow of twilight. The air cools gradually, carrying with it the subtle scent of sand, dust, and distant herbs that linger from oases long past. A caravan halts for the last time, its movement slowed to a rest, as if the earth itself has asked it to pause. Camels kneel carefully, lowering their bodies with quiet patience. Their breathing is steady, rhythmic, almost meditative. The travelers settle beside them, rolling out small bundles of bedding or simply leaning against the animals, exhausted yet unhurried. Each movement is deliberate, unhurried, shaped by days of walking across sun-scorched plains and over windswept dunes. Even the sounds of preparation, folding cloth, adjusting straps, shifting loads, are soft, muted by the vast emptiness around them. Above, the sky deepens into shades of navy and indigo. The first stars appear faintly, hesitant at first, like embers in a dying fire. Then, gradually, they bloom, scattering across the heavens in patterns unchanged for centuries. These are the same constellations seen by Xuanzang as he crossed mountains and deserts. They were seen by nameless traders who navigated by their faint glimmer. They were witnessed by monks, pilgrims, and merchants alike, all walking slow paths that shaped the veins of human civilization. The caravan sits quietly beneath this vast canopy. A single fire burns, small and low, its flickering light casting long shadows across the sand. The wind is gentle now, moving in faint whispered currents that stir robes and scarves, yet do not disturb the stillness of the night. The air tastes faintly of cool stone and earth, carrying a calmness that seems to seep into the bones, slowing the heartbeat, softening the mind. Somewhere, a traveler hums a quiet tune. It has no words, only notes that rise and fall with the rhythm of breathing and the subtle sway of the animals. It is older than memory, older than the Silk Road itself, echoing through time in the spaces between footsteps and sand. The melody flows like water, carrying with it a sense of continuity, of connection between those who came before and those who remain. The night stretches out, limitless and slow. Shadows lengthen, blend and fade. The soft crunch of sand underfoot, once so constant, has quieted to a faint, intermittent reminder of the journey that continues even in rest. The fire crackles briefly, then settles. Each flicker illuminates the faint lines on a trader's face, the careful folds of a monk's robe, the sturdy form of a camel resting at last. The desert itself seems to exhale. It is not still in the sense of emptiness, but in the sense of quiet continuity. Wind brushes over dunes, smoothing ridges, erasing footprints. The surface appears untouched, uniform. Yet underneath, it carries the memory of countless travelers, of caravans that moved with patience, and of lives lived in the slow rhythm of motion, endurance, and quiet observation. Even the smallest details are observed. The faint shimmer of moonlight on grains of sand, the soft rustle of a cloth as it settles over a bundle, a distant howl softened by space, reminding the listener of life beyond the immediate circle of firelight. The desert watches and holds these moments without judgment, indifferent to the passing of individual lives, yet curiously preserving traces that echo across generations. As darkness deepens, the caravan rests entirely. Eyes close slowly, bodies sink into the warmth of blankets and bedding, and the fire burns its last low embers. The wind, soft and persistent, carries a faint rhythm, a lullaby created by the earth itself. The stars remain above, steady and patient, guiding imagination rather than action, teaching that the road is not only a path across sand and stone, but a passage through time, memory, and quiet reflection. In these moments, the mind can drift freely. Thoughts are not urgent, expectations fade. The journey itself, long, arduous, and demanding, is transformed into a meditation. Each step, each hardship, each oasis, each hidden city, each palace passed, flows together into one continuum of movement and stillness. The road becomes a pulse, a soft, almost imperceptible rhythm beneath the conscious mind. There is no need to follow it actively. It continues on its own, endlessly, softly, carrying the past, present, and future along its quiet path. The caravan is part of it, yet it is also outside of it, resting while the road endures, unhurried, patient, and infinite. Even as individual lives fade, the desert, the stars, and the enduring rhythm of the Silk Road remain, carrying memory, patience, and calm into the silence. Eventually, even the faint hum ceases. The fire dies, The wind softens to a breath. The desert folds itself over the caravan, the camels, the travelers, the quiet tunes, the fading traces of footsteps. Time seems suspended, measured only in the soft movement of sand, the slow rotation of stars, and the patient drift of air over dunes. And in that moment it does not matter where the road leads, it does not matter what remains, or what has been left behind. All that exists is continuation, soft, deliberate, and endless. The road carries memory, endurance, and quiet reflection, flowing gently into the dark. It is a rhythm older than names, older than human reckoning, yet intimately tied to every step, every pause, every moment of stillness along its path. The night deepens, the desert, the caravan, the stars, and the wind merge into one slow, continuous pulse. The mind follows, softly, unhurriedly, surrendering to the calm, the quiet, the infinite unfolding of time. The road continues, carrying those who listen, step by step, into silence, into rest, into a gentle, unbroken sleep. Faint wind fades, the fire extinguishers, silence holds the desert, and the road goes on, softly, endlessly, into the dark.